Good evening and welcome to the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. This is a regular meeting and has the meeting been properly warned, Yoshi?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes. That's 3 sets of minutes from December 4th, December 21st, and December 28th. Does the clerk have a motion?
I do. It's okay. I got it. Well, unless you have.
No, I just had some tweaks.
Okay.
Interesting. Cool. All right.
So to the December 14th minutes, there are 2 comments that I made that I don't think got captured quite right.
Okay.
So line 22 on the second page. I went back to the videos for both of these. I do not regret how the police handled Kane's situation. I was doing one of the things that's recommended in the community safety review, which is acknowledging the harm that was caused.
Do you have suggested language, Jessica?
She acknowledged the harm of.
I would just remove regret and then put in acknowledged harm.
Acknowledge the harm of the incident that Kane experienced.
She acknowledged harm. Okay.
Yes.
Is there something else?
Then on page 3. So, I was asking Chief Prouty about training plans for the officers, not about trainings that did not encourage interaction with people with mental illness.
That line.
What line?
11 and 12.
Do you have a remedy for us? You want to say you asked Chief Party about trainings, period?
Individualized training plans, which were outlined in the community safety review.
Training plans.
Did you watch the video back?
Yes, I did.
Uh-huh. So what did you say?
I said I rambled a little bit, but it was about the community, the training. The community safety review recommended creating individualized training programs for police officers. And so I was asking about the progress on that.
Can I have a point of inquiry here? So I think this has happened before on the board when I was clerk. And the way we handled it was the line of interest that was identified by a board member was identified. And then it was sent back to Jan, who was doing the minutes then, and she reviewed the line and then kind of basically redid it, having heard the comments and having the video right there. And then it was shown to me as the clerk at the time. That to me seems like a better way of doing it than kind of expecting Jessica to come up with language that directly reflects what she said at the time. And I would offer that as an alternative to sort of the methodology we're doing right now.
We could offer to Jessica these edits, and after she reviewed them, she could make.
That came from, yeah, exactly.
When we said Jessica, for the public, the person that wrote these minutes is named Jessica, and the person that's raising the question about him is named Jessica. So who are we?
Oh, I thought you were.
Jessica Steckler.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Jessica Gelter, do you have any more comments you'd like to make?
No, that's the only thing.
All right, so let's follow those procedures, and then shall we save the passage of the minutes to the next meeting?
We could approve 21st and 28th,
Yeah.
unless anybody has any issue with anything that was
No,
written therein.
No? All right, go
Okay.
ahead, Daniel.
So I move to approve the minutes for the meeting from December 21st and December 28th, 2021.
Okay, Daniel has moved to approve the minutes of December 21st and 28th. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that has carried 5-0. Thank you. All right, chair's remarks. I just have a few, mostly consisting of wishing everyone a happy new year, welcoming Yoshi Manali to our little group, and looking forward to doing the town's business with our select board and our new town manager. So thank you. Yoshi, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, very brief. I just want to thank everybody for having me. This is my first day, so be patient, as I learn the ropes. For the first couple meetings, I'm probably deferring a lot of the questions you have to staff because they have a lot of the historical knowledge. And as I sort of build up, and Patrick and I have been talking about some of the things that he'll be able to answer on your behalf. So again, for the first couple of meetings, as I build up, then I'll be able to answer them more directly to you. And again, if there's any other questions before the meeting too, that I can be able to get for you beforehand, it allows me a little bit more prep time. I would really appreciate it. So, but I'm excited and I'm stepping into some very, very, very big shoes. So I am, again, this is a really good moment for me, and I really hope that for you as well. So thanks.
It is. Thank you. Are there select board members who would like to make comments or committee reports? Yes, Tim.
Make a comment. First of all, to everybody, happy 2022. We hope it's going to be an even better year this year. I'll leave it at that as far as everything that's happening in the world. But also welcome to Yoshi. I hope that we can help make those transitions into those shoes more comfortable for you. And I think we'll try to go easy on you, especially for your first meeting.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to do something I always try to do at the end of the meeting, which is to thank BCTV, who always helps us so much, no matter where we are, it seems. Get the word out and get us into everyone's living rooms or on people's phones, as it were. And also all of the media that's going to be joining us or is joining us either remotely or here in person. The Reformer, the Commons, VT Digger, Brattleboro. Have I left anyone out that we normally get coverage from? WCAX? I don't know. Anyway, thank you. I just wanted to say that because, and also, of course, the interpreters who are always here with us as well. Thank you so much for your service, which sometimes pushes past 10 p.m.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to welcome Yoshi. I hope that you have a good beginning, and I look forward to our meetings together and working together.
Yeah, welcome, Yoshi. I just wanted to make my quick, much shorter announcement about elections again, because we only have a couple before the deadline has passed. So there are petitions available at the town clerk's office for town officers, unified school board officers, and town meeting members. And the deadline to get those back is January 24th at 5 p.m. If you want to be a town meeting member, you need 10 valid signatures from a registered voter in town. And if you want to be a town or school officer, you need 30 valid signatures from a registered Brattleboro voter in town. So if you're a town meeting member that currently holds office with terms expiring this year, letters of intent should have already been mailed out to you. And so the deadline to return those is also Monday, January 24th at 5 p.m. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Yes, Jessica.
Sure. Happy New Year. Welcome, Yoshi. And I just want to do a little plug for getting those booster shots and getting fully vaccinated. It's really important. There are sites all around town that are offering them, and you can check in on the Vermont Department of Health website for information about that and to book an appointment.
Great, Jessica. Thank you. It's also on the town website, a link to the state health department.
Great.
Yeah. All right, public participation. Patrick, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda?
Yep, there's a hand up, is Ricky Rosati.
Ricky Rosati, please join us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I was wondering if anyone on the select board or otherwise, if anyone had any comments about their thoughts and feelings about the news reports about the select board meetings that don't include any public comments that disagree with the select board members?
Ricky, the only comment I have to make is that public meetings without public comment are against the open meeting law. And here you are in a public comment, so. I'm not aware of the matter that you're bringing up to the board.
Well, one specific example I felt angry about was when I disagreed with the decision and the process of the decision of how the new Civil War monument was approved. And just in the reformer, Christopher Mays didn't report any comments about people, like the reasons why they disagreed with the select board decision. And so I just wonder if anyone has any thoughts and feelings about like kind of erasing opposition points of view.
Well, Ricky, everyone raised the presentation, and the teachers and the committee members involved presented their issues and concerns, and you presented your issues and concerns, and that's the democratic process. So I thank you for your comments, and I don't think there's any more to be said on that issue. Anyone else, Patrick?
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. There's 2 items on the consent agenda. The information was in our package and available to the public. One is a development agreement with the Brattleboro Housing Partnership regarding Melrose Terrace, and the other is Build Back Roads Grant. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to, sorry.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Anne has moved to approve the consent agenda as written. All members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
It has passed 5-0. Thank you, Ian. All right, unfinished business. Item A, review status of 2021-2022 Select Board goals. Yoshi, would you like to present that memo to us?
Yes, this is the annual select board goals established April 20th, 2021. And I believe this is a quarterly. You'll be, or 3 times a year, you will be reviewing it. So we can go through each one. Would you like to go through each item, or how would you like to just go through it all?
No,
I don't know how much you guys want to do.
Okay.
How much you want to review it. But,
you know what? Let me take that back.
Right, thank you, Beth.
And, I'm going to suggest, first of all, it seemed like time was passing very quickly since the last time we reviewed them.
Mhm.
So what I would suggest, I think we reviewed them in November, was that if anyone has any commentary on these issues, that we should bring them up, and otherwise let it stand until our next review. So are there select board members who would like to discuss any item in our select board goals? I think that there's a nice discussion on what has happened to date that we've all reviewed.
Right. And this is the last time that we will look at these goals for this particular period. The vast majority of these goals have had significant progress or have been achieved. And so, thanks to all the people that did that work.
Yeah.
Some of it was us. Some of it wasn't.
Definitely. And, here we are sitting here with Yoshi. And so obviously that's a task that was completed.
Yes.
Good job, Yoshi.
Thanks.
Good job.
I showed up.
I made it.
All right. So,
I'll
yes,
just
Tim.
Make a comment.
Yes.
It's not about a specific, I think, in looking back, having the experience of doing this, I guess 5 times, that would make sense, right? Four
We didn't
times?
do it last year.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
Goal was like just to make it.
Goal
through.
was like,
Just try-
get through the year.
Because I was going to say, it's a very good point. What I was gonna say is this feels like the set of select board goals, which have definitely been, things have gotten so different. I'm feeling like this is the end of the year, but for us, it's kind of the end of our service year.
Yes.
Towards it. We really couldn't have imagined where we are now when we started these goals. And I'm not sure what the point of that is, except that it really does sort of highlight the fact that goals are exactly that. It helps us highlight and focus ourselves as a board as to what we want to help the community accomplish together. And I think if you read through this, we've done a pretty good job at doing that. I'm excited because so many of these things are checked off and in the past. And now I'm even more excited about working on the next goals, perhaps, if I'm still with the board. So I think what gets really exciting is when you see progress.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Tim. Like, we can see the progress in this response, but also we can see how they've evolved, and certainly COVID threw a monkey wrench into everything, but it's, we have a means to approach that as well now, along with everything else. So police reform and everything, it's all in the works. And I think it shows our continued commitment to these goals. Anyone else want to comment? All right, then. Does the public speak about this?
You could.
Okay, there we go. Next is, I'd like to welcome Millicent Cooley to discuss her plans for the, what's the name of that committee?
RTM steering committee.
RTM Steering Committee.
Yes.
Millicent, are you here? There you go.
Unmute. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for letting me speak. So the request from this committee is, we have a request to place an article on the warning to include up to $2,500 in the fiscal year 23 budget to pay for lunch on day one at the 2023 RTM if the meeting is in person. This includes full support for Brattleboro Union High School in providing the lunch, as has been kind of a tradition for them to provide some, they have been selling lunches in order to raise funds for their student programs, and also logistics support from this committee, as we're, a service to RTM. So that's the request. And it's the result of a number of motions and amendments that add up to that. The main gist of this is lunch on day one and a commitment to the students' fundraising. And it follows, I think, in the proposal, attempts to follow the model provided by the Everyone Eats program, which was really a successful program and showed that a lot of people could be fed in a really practical way, and that this community knows how to feed itself. The reasons for, and this was, by the way, a majority vote in all cases, but not in every case on the committee. There were also people who dissented. The reasons for providing lunch from the majority of people who voted include the fact that it's support for long meetings on day one. Those meetings have been running 10 to 13 hours on day one for the last few years. And community building when sharing a meal. There's a tradition in some Vermont towns for having lunch on Vermont on town meeting day. And I think that what we've heard from people who've been in those towns is that it was community building, that people are coming together, and actually helps break up tensions from people who may be disagreeing, to have a meal with their neighbor. That is, and the way it would be handled in the suggestion is that it would be a pre-order, as it is the way that the students do this now is with their pre-order. It has to be pre-ordered so it would happen quickly on the break and not slow up town meeting. And then they would use vouchers. So if people didn't want the lunch, the town would not be spending that money. So the town would be spending the money for the amount of vouchers that people decided to use. Yeah, so I think that's the initial summary.
Okay, Nelson, the memo that we have has that item as number 2. So I'm happy to discuss that one first. And I just wondered, are there other members of the public who would like to speak on that issue as well?
Ricky Rosati.
Ricky. Okay, Ricky, would you like to join us?
Hello. So I'm on that committee and I've been going to the meetings, and my impression is that we agreed to offer the meal not just to the representative members, which is what the specific agenda item says on the select board members today. And so I just was hoping that there would be a change to provide food for everyone that RSVPs in advance that plans on participating there. Because I just think it's just so rude to say like only the elected officials are allowed to eat and other people like or are going to be provided to eat and other people aren't, because like there's so many other people that are going to be participating in part of the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. Are there other members, Patrick?
Yes. No. No. Yes. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of flip-flopping around here. Looks like Sonia, possibly Sonia Silver.
Okay. Sonia, would you like to join us?
Hi there. Hi, I'm also on the committee, and I can only stay for the first part of this meeting, so I may not be able to be here for your full discussion, but I just wanted to underline a little bit about what Millicent said about the community building aspect of sharing food, that I at least joined that committee, and I think many other people joined the committee because RTM is a really important part of our town's culture and obviously our town's decision-making. And it can be a kind of an alienating experience, especially for people who are new to town, who are new to Robert's rules, who are new to this kind of decision-making. And providing food is not only a straightforward accessibility issue in terms of making it available for more people to attend. It also, we hope, would really change the feeling and the culture of RTM and have it turn from what has been a polarizing experience for many people, especially people who maybe are in a minority in this town in terms of age or race or gender, and move it towards hopefully more of a community building experience, which I think it sometimes can be and it sometimes isn't, depending on a few different factors. So I really hope that you pass both of these recommendations from the town committee. We talked about these issues, I think, at 3 different meetings for probably 45 minutes each, because it's obviously a change in our culture, but it feels like a really important one if we want our town meeting to continue to reflect the diversity that that we know our town is growing into, and that we'd like our town meeting to reflect. Thank you.
Patrick? That's it. Okay.
A clarifying question. So in the memo that we have, wait, did this memo change? Am I looking at the actual most recent one? Because I know that it was the last minute.
Oh,
Okay, what I have in my backup here is 2 things. Item number 1 is requesting to place an article on the warning for this town meeting to decide whether to do lunch for next year, for the 2023 town meeting.
Mhm.
I'm fine with that. I think town meeting members should discuss this and decide what they want to do. Item number 2, ask for funding in the current fiscal year budget that we're in right now for this year's lunch and that's not in the administrative report. The motion is simply to place the article. Is that correct? Patrick, help me out here.
Yeah, so as I know Millicent included in her memo, when we put together the fiscal 22 budget, which is the budget we're operating in now, we didn't set aside funds specifically for a meal at representative town meeting. If the board agrees that this is something we ought to provide, if in fact we meet in person, we will find the funds for that within the budget.
Okay.
There didn't need to be a specific motion. The board could just indicate its desire to see that move forward, and we'll take care of the rest.
Okay. May I just make 1 or 2 more comments?
You have the floor, Dave.
Thank you so much. The likelihood of an in-person town meeting for this year, I would say, is slim to none.
Yep.
And so I don't feel like this is really a big thing for us to discuss right now. I think it's fine to put it on the warning, and I think RTM should be making decisions about whether RTM members have lunch provided for them. That is basically all I have to say. If we get into a bigger discussion, I have more things to say, but that's the gist of it.
Ian.
Are we opening discussion on just this whole thing, or is there more?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I might just piggyback off Daniel to give the board at least a sense for where this side of the room is. I basically feel the same way, a little differently. I think this is an opportunity for the board to sort of establish what our interaction with the steering committee is, and this being the first year for the RTM steering committee. And I think that this is an opportunity to give them an opportunity to present something to RTM and see what they think. So I don't really want to step in the way of that and do anything with FY22. And we can put it as an article, and I'm in full agreement of that, but I'm not in support of doing anything with RTM for 2022 at all.
Well, the middle of the room feels much the same. First, let me just say that if I spent $15 on my lunch, I'd feel terribly guilty. And that's if my own budget, much less, taxpayer dollars. So I just think that's a lot. And I think that all this team building discussion is, other towns have potlucks. Other towns, don't spend taxpayer money on things like this. And I don't like it. So my concern is that if we follow the process by taking the steering committee's recommendation and bringing it on a motion for representative town meeting, that it be understood that we are not endorsing this process. We are merely transferring the wishes of the steering committee to the body of the representative town meeting for them to vote on, and we are not endorsing it. And I just want that to be clear. And as for this year, I don't think it's likely that we will be in person, and I am also not in favor of funding this motion this year. I think it goes against the spirit of volunteerism and fiscal frugality. Do my colleagues wish to speak?
Want to go along the
Just
line?
go down the line.
You can break up the line, or I'll go.
I'll go, sure. I love the idea of eating together and sharing space together. And I love the idea of there being some sort of support so that everyone can participate, no matter their income level or ability to, get food from here or there or eat certain things. I'm feeling the same way Daniel is about the representative town meeting, probably being a remote endeavor again this year. But all that said, I think it really brings up the question for me about how, or if it's my first year, so I'm learning, but how the select board can spend money that's outside of the parameters of the budget that the town meeting reps approved. And if there is some relationship that develops between the steering committee and the select board around that sort of spending, I think we're treading on dangerous territory. So I'm totally in support of putting it as an article on the warning for the next year, especially because we may not be in person anyway. But I also want to just put out there that I'm not sure we should be functioning in that way, where the steering committee asks for money that's outside of the budget at this level, and we spend it without the approval or without it being in the town budget, right? That's where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also sort of definitely in favor of putting it on the RTM warning. And my main desire for that was just to poll the members, of which we are part. But of course, on that important day, we'll get all the RTM members letting us know if they actually support spending taxpayer dollars for lunch. And if they think it's necessary, because personally, when you are in a room at the gym or wherever it is, I often choose to leave, maybe grab a couple other RTM members just so we can chat about things, and go outside the building. So a lot of people might not want to stick around and just get some fresh air, or indeed bring their own bag lunch, which I've done 1 year too. So I really think it would be more prudent to let RTM weigh in on this just by putting it on the warning.
All right, so we do not need a motion about this year, but I'm assuming from what I've heard, and everyone can nod, that we do not wish to put it in this year's, buy lunch with this year's meeting. And the likelihood that that would even be necessary is very low.
I would like to say that there's maybe more of a chance than people think to have an in-person meeting. There could be a very rapid changes happening within the next month that makes people reconsider that. But so I don't want to kill that entirely.
Well, either way,
We're not making that decision tonight anyway.
Either way,
Not on the agenda.
either way, we're bringing our own lunch.
And when it is on the agenda, we will make it based on the available information at the time.
All right.
Just to ask a clarifying question. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it its own separate article, separate from the budget, so that town meeting reps can weigh in specifically on this one thing.
Yes. Yes. And making it so without any expressed recommendation from the select board.
Right. Placing it on the warning is not saying we think this should happen. It's simply, these are the people who should be deciding this matter. As Tim pointed out, we are RTM members as well, but just 5 RTM members out of however many. So yeah, it's just putting it on the warning, letting RTM talk about it, and then make a decision.
And I think this is part of what the steering committee is for.
Yes.
Right. Like what I heard last year when this committee was created was we need a body of RTM members so that they can kind of work on things during the year that are coming up and can bring it to the board before RTM to be able to put things on the agenda. Because the year before the steering committee, when I was on the board, there was a lot of question about like, how do you get things on the agenda? Like, how does that happen? So I think this is a perfect, illustration of that and
Of that process.
Yeah. So.
And would you like to make a motion?
I made the last one. So.
Millicent was trying to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Millicent.
Do you want me to read the request, just the wording of the request, or do you want me to
No, a select board member needs to make the motion, Millicent, so we
Oh.
have it written down.
Sorry, I thought you
Oh,
wanted
I thought you asked me a question. Were you asking,
No.
do you want something from me?
No,
No.
Tim thought you
Tim
had a
put you on the
comment
spot.
to make.
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Is there any other public comment?
Are there any other public comments, Patrick? Before we vote? Okay, who would like to make a motion?
I'll make it.
Thank you.
I move to place an article on the 2022 representative town meeting warning and to include the sum of $2,500 in the FY. Oh, yeah, no, this is right. I guess the article is about should they place the sum of 2,000. I'm just going to read it as it's written because I'm assuming somebody thought about this.
Yes.
Okay, I move to place an article on the 2022. Go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
So I certainly am not trying to interrupt, but the request coming from Millicent and the RTM steering committee with regard to this is twofold. One, to place an article on the town meeting warning to authorize up to $2,500 for lunch, but also to add $2,500 to the fiscal 23 budget. In the event that the separate article is voted down, that money would come out of the budget before the budget was approved.
Okay.
Okay, so this
So will be
motion as
adding
written.
$2,500 to the budget and having a separate article for it.
For
Okay.
the,
No. I don't think I'm in favor of that.
is that a procedural
Well, it's the
thing?
same thing, really.
It was the request from the committee. The board could choose to say, you know what, we don't wish to endorse this. We'd rather keep it out of the budget and just have the article. Then if the article gets approved, we could do the opposite. Add the $2,500 into the budget before the budget gets voted on. So
Let's do that.
That makes more sense.
okay.
That way we get to hear from RTM before a budgetary decision. is made.
Confuses me. They seem to get it.
Okay, so let's look at this.
Okay, so we need to.
But can I suggest that we include the up to language in
Uh-huh.
the
Yep.
motion? Because
Well-
the motion didn't have the up to.
Are we even going to mention the money in the motion now?
Well, when you
Yes.
talk about adding a number to the budget, I felt that up to was ambiguous.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you add $2,500 to the budget, add $2,500 to the budget. If you don't spend it all, okay.
Uh-huh.
But you needed to add a firm number.
Makes sense.
If you don't wish to add that to the budget, that's fine.
Okay, so how about this? To place an article on the 2022 representative town meeting warning, take out and to include the sum of $2,500 to pay for lunch on one day of representative town meeting in March of 2023.
Right. Is this in any way different than what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Moving
took,
that and makes it.
I took the and out. I took the, in the FY 23 budget.
Yeah, I guess.
And this motion is not going to be the language of the article.
Correct.
We'll have Bob bring Bob
Great,
Oh,
good.
the article.
Okay.
can I just so move that? Please.
All right. Daniel has moved to place an article on the 2022 representative town meeting warning to include the sum of $2,500 to pay for lunch on day one of representative town meeting in March of 2023. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0. Thank you, Millicent.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, further consideration of the FY 23 general fund budget unfinished matters. Yoshi?
Yes, one of the items that we might be consider for next, the 18th, Dan from DPW will be coming forward to talk about an increase in funding, possibly for the capital request for a sidewalk repair, as he'll talk more about that in detail on the 18th. But just wanted to make sure you knew that that was coming, that it'd be approximately an $88,000 increase.
And then, do you want to walk us through these changes in this memo? Well, I'm still on lunch over here. Hold on. There we go.
I think Patrick's offering some.
Yeah, sorry, go
Would you
ahead.
like me to speak?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd be happy to. So the memo before you this evening regarding the fiscal 23 general fund budget, what we attempted to do with this memo is to enumerate the number of sort of open issues for which we believe the board will need to make a decision in order for us to put the FY23 budget to bed. Included are numerous attachments in support of each of the various open items, some of which have been before the board before, others are new. So some of the remaining issues that the board will need to come to a final determination on are the capital request. Included is, of course, the capital request. Are we going to do anything different with respect to sidewalks? I know at various points in time in the budget discussion, we've talked about, maybe we should have a broader or more aggressive approach to sidewalks. This relates to what Town Manager Manali was just speaking to. The Public Works Department had recently put out an RFP for sidewalk replacement on South Main. The prices came in much higher than we anticipated, a total of $88,000 more than we have currently budgeted. We could use the existing $120,000, which is in the fiscal 23 capital request, to address that overrun. But what that means is the sidewalk replacement that we would plan to do in fiscal 23 now is underfunded. So that is really hot and fresh news. Dan will be here at the 18th meeting to sort of walk the board through that. And so one of the open items when we think about the capital request would be, do we wish to increase our commitment to sidewalks, particularly in light of what we see as a cost overrun? We have two positions that have been incorporated into the budget, so the board need not do anything, and these two positions will be carried in the budget if in fact that is your wish. One is an evidence technician within the police department, and there's a memo from Brattleboro Police Chief Norma Hardy included in the packet. The other is the HR assistant, and there's a memo from HR Director Sally Nix included in the packet, along with some data that we were able to gather from other area municipalities in terms of the number of staff that they have in place to manage human resources within their organizations. We tried to compile data from relatively similar municipalities in Vermont and Greenfield, Massachusetts. We had varying degrees of participation from those municipalities. Some got their data right back to us, and some, frankly, we still haven't heard from, which was a little disappointing, but it is what it is. What we can say after looking at other municipalities of communities of relatively similar size that have a relatively complicated personnel complement, such as the town of Brattleboro. We've got 150 staff spread out across 4 unions plus non-union staff. So we're talking about a sufficient amount of complexity. Town of Brattleboro has the largest, most complex staffing complement for any municipality that only has one HR staff. So there is information in there about the HR assistant. The use of fund balance was addressed well in Town Manager Elwell's memo from November 4, so we included that. There was a discussion about whether to make any adjustments to sales tax revenue. The historical data for sales tax is presented. Staff believes there is good reason to go ahead and raise that revenue line item from $950,000 to $1 million. Certainly it's a board decision. There's a couple open issues about the community safety fund and whether or not to relocate it elsewhere in the budget. Staff's recommendation is, at least for this year, it should stay within the police budget because that is identifying from where the funds came to pay for those positions. In future years, that likely won't be the case. We're anticipating in next year we'll be taking a look at, together with Chief Hardy and Town Manager Manali, we'll be taking a look at what should the proper staffing level be for our police officers, and then we'll fund that. And so then there won't likely be a savings, meaning that the transfer will need to be coming from some other source other than the police budget. And for that reason, then it would be a good time to move the transfer out of the police department and into the sort of general transfers. And then the last item is, there was talk about a community engagement line item. I must admit, I sort of answered this from my perspective. I heard a couple of different things identified as community engagement, one of which is some of the stipends that we've been providing to folks who give up their time and participate in committees to help improve some of the work that the town does. That is generally fairly small dollars that we're able to find within the budget that we have. But then there was the much more comprehensive sort of almost public information officer that I know was brought up when we talked about redesigning the website and having the staffing, the dedicated staffing to make communication and engagement with the community a more regular practice of what we do. At the time that we funded the website redevelopment, which was in this year's budget, it was thought that, well, let's get that process underway and then we'll bring somebody on in the future. So we could certainly take a look at that now. I know Town Manager Manali is excited about the possibility for that. But as it stands today, I think we're thinking that's something for the FY24 budget, unless the board decides otherwise.
Thank you, Patrick. That's really helpful. All right, so let's go over this. Let's just make sure we understand the purpose. The purpose of this discussion is to make sure that further information or discussion is not needed and that we'll be ready on January 18th to vote on the budget. So that being said, I know that there was a lot of discussion about the capital expenditures and the use of fund balance. And in Peter's memo, that's in the back here, I think it's like 3 from the end, he has this paragraph that suggests, he even uses the word I recommended the select board reduce the usual 10% set aside of unassigned fund balance to the shocking amount of 9% for FY23, and that he further recommends that the select board increase the use of fund balance in FY23 budget to $249,000. So does anyone need more information or disagree or want to discuss that item? Yes, Daniel.
Yes. Thank you to Town Manager Elwell, retired, for this memo from the past. I recall at the time we asked, but what about 8.5? And we were given this figure of no more than 350,000. And that 350,000, using 350,000 worth of fund balance would still keep the town on track with $1 million for capital. It would not move forward. It would just be kind of, treading water, but it would relieve the burden a little more on the taxpayer than the 249. And so I just wanted to remind my board members, my fellow board members, not my board members, my fellow board members of this, and invite us to consider it. And if there's more to be said about it, then maybe let's say for the 18th, or maybe we say no, I don't know.
More now, more on the 18th. Anyone?
I think that the chair has very clearly laid out sort of the purpose of this to be, do you need more info on these things? Mm-hmm. I think everybody on the board is very aware that this particular item is going to have a lot of discussion. And if we're not going to come to a decision tonight about it, I don't really see the purpose in going through it twice.
Oh, I thought we were just picking off things that we thought we could accomplish. We're gonna push everything to the 18th?
No. We're just going through the fund balance issue. There is, varying opinions, so we'll save that to the 18th.
Oh, so are we gonna decide on some things tonight? I thought you were saying we're
Well,
not gonna decide.
no,
anything
what I'm looking for is closure. That some items remain open and some items we
Oh,
could
I
get
misunderstood.
nodding approval tonight to say
Okay.
we're done.
I apologize. I misunderstood.
Consensus on closure? Or-
Yeah, okay, so,
So I would say like that one's definitely
That one's
not
open.
closed. Yeah.
and the sidewalk replacement is definitely
Yes.
open because we're
Of the-
also going to get new information about that. But I thought that we had a very robust and compelling presentation about the need for an evidence technician. Does that remain an open issue or are we settled on that matter? I'm seeing nodding.
It's settled for me.
Settled.
Settled.
Yeah.
Settled.
Okay, settled. Similarly, the HR assistant, nodding.
Less of a slam dunk for me, but I am grudgingly, yeah.
Do
Okay.
you want to keep it open and we can talk about it next week?
I just don't know if I would need it. I can't really ask for more information to kind of delay. I mean, if
Because
I
you got
really have a
the-
change in heart, I can let you know.
Well,
I don't really feel like.
Basically, you may be the outlier. Who knows?
I may be, but that's,
Yeah.
at this point,
And you're fine with that, and I'm fine with that, and everybody's fine with that. But, I was convinced of the need based on Sally's workload and the complexity of the job that it is. Jessica, are you nodding?
Yeah, I'm on board. I'm on board.
Okay.
Especially after getting the most recent emails from the idea committee and hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That is
Amazing
actually
work.
really
Absolutely. Okay, so that's settled in as much as it's going to be settled. The use of fund balance is still up in the air as we discussed. The sales tax revenue.
Oh, let's get that done.
Let's get that done.
Well, I
Okay,
have some notes on
Modest
this.
increase.
a modest increase to $1 million.
I also have something to propose, I think,
Didn't,
and a couple clarifying questions on this stuff. I think probably Patrick's.
did you want to go higher? No.
Go ahead, Tim, go
Appropriate
ahead.
now, or-
You might as well, yeah.
The meals and sales tax. Just so anyone,
Is that in the backup material?
it was.
Wasn't it amended one
after
time?
Because it was.
Oh, I didn't
corrected
print it.
to be put in the backup material, so. But it simply is just a historical summation of all of the revenue per quarter of both rooms and meals tax and sales tax over the last couple of years. Of course, sales tax only goes back to FY 2020. And it kind of just summarizes for the board how the trend lines have been going, I guess you could say. I had one clarifying question to Patrick. In the sales tax, in the budget line item for 2022, it says 825, but according to the note, we had started at 950 and we're pushing it to 1 million. Can you remind me why it says 825 in the?
So it's 825 in the fiscal 22 budget, which is the budget we're in presently. The budget that the board is working on is the fiscal 23 budget.
Oh,
It's in at
okay.
950,
Okay,
and we're proposing to go ahead and raise that to 1 million.
absolutely. Okay, that was my brain problem that I was just having. So I'm definitely in favor of raising the 950 originally proposed 950 to 1 million. It's conservative. I think we're going to go over that. But again, this is a budget and we want to be fairly conservative with budgets. But we also want to be aware that this is taxpayer money and we should be realistic on where our funds are coming from. I sort of have my eye on whether or not the 385 in the budget. Actually, what is the current budget for the
Fiscal 22, So the year we're in is 385.
Yeah, but for fiscal,
For 23, to get that.
sorry.
I can get it first.
395.
There you go.
Stop the
Three
clock.
95.
Yeah.
I was very close.
Well, I was gonna suggest raising it to 400,000. Well, it's a nice rounder number, but it's a little laughable because it's only 5,000.
Let's leave it at 395. And if it comes in at 4, then great.
Yes, yes, okay. You know, my purpose in trying to be more accurate with what we're actually gonna get in on these numbers is to feel like we can spend that extra when we get some report back from Dan on the 18th. You know, it really is, my attitude is like, we are at our limits. We are really pushing the limits with adding 2 full-time employees to our budget. There's a lot going on in this budget, and you know, emotionally for me, looking at the sales tax, you know, revenue, which is so impressive, and not really being able to point to specific reward for all that hard work and all those 1 penny at a time that everybody's been giving to. Thank you very much to everybody shopping both, thankfully, on Amazon and other. We also get a piece of that now. 1 penny, or actually I should say 2/3 of 1 penny. Let's not go into that annoyance. But really, it's been a little bit frustrating to see that we have a sales tax situation going to $1 million of income that is not paid for by property taxpayers, but not really feeling like we are, you know, helping the taxpayer out by a reduction. On the other hand, what we are seeing is that we've been able to make those capital improvements, those investments in the future, and we perhaps are getting much smarter with how we buy things cash instead of borrowing. So I'm just kind of trying to advocate for really being respectful of how important this $1 million of revenue in our 19 million or now close to $20 million budget is to the taxpayers in the community. So
Well, Tim,
after all that,
you know, I think,
if we wanted to go to 400,000 for the meals and meals, I would consider that a friendly amendment.
all right, well, we'll consider that. But when you were speaking, I was thinking of the interrelatedness of the sales tax revenue, the use of fund balance, and the sidewalks. And, you know, those are the things that we will be considering as we settle on our budget next meeting. They are all interrelated.
So are we keeping that open then? This one as well?
The rooms. And
Well,
Rooms and meals?
the item was to move it $2 million, and I thought we all agreed on that.
No, that's the sales.
That's the sales.
Sales tax,
Sales tax.
I think we're all in nodding agreement.
I think we're in
On the 1 million.
And you want to move it, the rooms and meals up $5,000 as a friendly amendment.
I'm gonna head nod on that one.
And
We got.
I just don't see the point.
Oh
You know, 50,000 is a meaningful number in the budget. These are projections. You know, this is not expenditures.
The point
And
is
I
to
would
try to get it
rather-
as close as possible.
I know what the point is, you know, and I trust that town staff who worked diligently on bringing us this budget chose 395 for a reason. And I'm gonna go with them on that.
And I agree with
Yeah.
Daniel. I think it's a change without any meaning.
And if we come in over 395, then the following budget setting cycle, town staff will be like, oh, we are under budgeted for this and we should adjust it. But the rooms and meals is very much in flux
Mhm.
because of COVID, and, you know, there's a lot of empty spaces on FY22 here that we have no clue what's going to happen. And I went for lunch today and it was pretty quiet. So my anecdotal evidence is
Well,
a reduction in
my
revenue.
anecdotal evidence.
Are we really having a
I'm
discussion over?
joking, I'm joking.
There's been way too much discussion about lunch today,
Yeah.
and let's move on.
I paid for it myself.
Okay, the Community Safety Fund. Patrick has recommended that we maintain the line item that has a relationship to the police budget, and that if in the future we give to this fund and it's not reflective of the number of policemen, then that makes a lot more sense. So I'm content to let that, as he put it, the transfer to sit. How does everyone else feel about that? Nodding, 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 except for Jessica. She's nodding in the other direction. Okay.
How do you do that? You mean like this?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Like
All right. Well, we have 3 nods, 4 nods in favor. So I would consider that matter settled.
Would you like to speak to it?
Would you like to speak to it?
I think I spoke to it plenty last time.
Okay. Create a community engagement line item. There's 2 parts to this, and I wonder how the board feels about, first of all, do we want to have this public information engagement officer when we have the website? Are people content to wait for that? You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I had not really seen this articulated like this until right now, or until reviewing this material. And I kind of would like to just keep it open and have more discussion on the 18th.
Very good.
That's, yeah.
Well, that's easy for us for tonight. So we'll just, it's good because it lets Town Manager Manali and staff know that this is still an open item. Yes?
There was one more piece to this. When I
Yes.
brought it up, it was inspired specifically by a comment I got from somebody on the RTM steering committee about helping the public know more about elections and opportunities to join committees, which would specifically be a line item in the town clerk's budget, just to boost communication tools. So that's what spurred me to add this to the list. I also love the other stuff in it.
Yes.
So I want to talk about
I know that
when we do talk about it on the 18th, I would like that to be a part of our consideration.
right. And when we do talk about it on the 18th, I will mention that there has been the establishment of Andy Davis to inform Newtown meeting reps about the processes and engagement and how to so forth. So that element has been addressed within the steering committee in that way.
Right, it was a different, I'm
Okay.
talking about something different.
All right. So,
So can I just? for
Oh, please.
clarification,
yes,
On the 18th, we're going to talk about community engagement in general,
yes.
or specifically about a community, what was it, the public information officer,
Mhm.
because that's not going to happen. So what are we talking about on the 18th?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I may, is there any information staff can bring back to help facilitate that discussion, however it may wish to be?
Mr. Goodenough?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to nail down exactly what it is that we were talking about with like a line in the budget that's labeled community engagement. And you know, I actually just like, this sort of continues a discussion that we had last year about this. And, you know, it kind of was, the board came around the idea that the website was a really important component of that. And we really haven't completed that yet. And so I sort of saw,
You haven't
like-
even started it.
well, I would say that that's not quite accurate because there's been work on getting the RFP. And so there's been movement in working with members of the community to sort of decide exactly what they want in the website. But no, but we haven't actually had the website made yet. So I think that's like part of why I'm struggling to know exactly what the next step is, because that first step isn't done. So that's kind of why I don't feel like, I guess we could talk about this a lot right now. I'm trying to think of like what we could get further on this. I don't really agree with putting it in the town clerk's budget. I don't see it as I don't know. I think like just having heard Hillary's presentation and at least knowing a little bit about the election component based on my work with as a justice of the peace, like, I don't know, it's not quite what I pictured this being. That's not to say that the board doesn't feel differently, but so.
And props to Patrick and Yoshi for pointing out that, to quote, this is a small and unpredictable expense that can be addressed within the budget as it stands, referring to those things that would apply to something that you're referring to in the town clerk, right? Okay.
Well, I think that's referring to the stipends, but maybe.
No, I mean, that's an example of something that doesn't necessarily have to be addressed in budget discussions if that's what our parameters for the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just throwing it out there.
It could be within and without.
I just don't want to give us mission creep for the 18th.
Fair. Yes, agreed.
Daniel.
To quote the select board goals, public outreach. Number 1, create a new town website that is inclusive, informative, and user-friendly. That is what town meeting voted on, appropriating some number of dollars to do.
70.
Thank you. Internal and external outreach is ongoing on that. Number 2, increase the amount and quality of community engagement, and that will be included in the RFP for the website. Is that correct?
If that's what it says.
That's what it says. And in the project implementation, right? So this idea of the website going hand in hand with community engagement was sort of germane to last year's budget discussion and is still kind of in progress. And I don't feel like we're going to have anything substantive to talk about on the 18th. And I feel actually that it would be a big surprise if we were to put a chunk of money towards something that honestly we can't even define at this point.
Bingo.
And when we had the town clerk's budget discussion, did you ask the question about community engagement and whether there could be an increased, line in there? I don't remember.
I don't remember it.
Well,
Okay.
You know what? The steering committee wanted the town clerk to prepare a postcard to send to people about representative town meeting. And I don't think it's necessary. And, if we have the proper engaged public with our community engaged website, we'll be there. And it's just a matter of people kind of wishing we were further along with that system before it's been completed. Yes.
Because I come to these meetings with open ears, I find Daniel's comments pretty compelling, even though it's hard for me to let go of this because I think it's such an important issue. So I would agree, probably it does not really make sense to continue this discussion on the 18th. I do really strongly feel that this needs to continue to be, and I'm going to plug right now that I talked about the public information officer last year.
Yes.
And I still think it's a really important issue and discussion topic. So yeah.
I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the select board goals, we kind of loaded ourselves and town staff for achieving the vast majority of them. That piece of the goals has not been achieved and is very much still a live matter. And my recollection of our discussion last year was that, yes, increasing the quality of our community engagement is important. I believe that, all of the departments are trying to do a better job with that. And we've seen a few examples of that this year. Rec and Parks have done some good work, planning have done some good work.
Yeah.
And so we're not letting this go forever. It's just, this isn't the right time to all of a sudden say, okay, this amount of dollars for
What?
who knows what.
All right. That may mean,
One last comment.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the sustainability coordinator's position and how that emerged out of a very wishful but undetermined process, but that we wanted Brattleboro to be more sustainable. And we didn't completely understand what that meant yet. And the sustainability coordinator has defined what that is. I think that that can be a great model for thinking about a public information officer eventually.
There's some history there, Jessica.
Yeah, you hear the full room. You weren't here for that whole discussion.
And I know that it was its own thing in the whole.
All right, I think we're ready for new business.
That was provocative.
That was well done.
Yoshi, will
Yeah.
our sustainability coordinator speak to this agricultural advisory committee recommendation?
Correct. I believe Stephen is on the line.
All right then. What an introduction for Stephen Dawson.
Your ears burning.
Good evening. You're kind of in the dark.
Patrick, are you able to unmute?
And he's mute.
Stephen.
No hands raised.
It's Stephen.
No,
Stephen for the Ag and Land Group.
Good evening, Select Board.
Hi,
Good
Stephen.
evening.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you all?
Good, thank you.
I'm happy to be sharing this proposal with you all and introducing Ashlyn Bristol in a few minutes. She is the chair of the Ag Advisory Committee. And we are very excited that, the committee rebooted last year. Just for a quick review, it had been inactive for over a decade. Its focus had been rather narrow and very restricted to farmland preservation specifically. There is a goal within the town plan that we widen the scope of this fund and this committee. And so after having rebooted, we have done some work to kind of reformulate how this fund could be put into the service of the community again, because it has been dormant for a very long time now. And the intention generally is to put it in service of the larger food system and enable it to be more flexible in the uses that it's applied to. Those would, of course, be approved by the town through a process. The details of this are yet to be fleshed out. What we bring before you today to really decide upon is whether or not to include a question at representative town meeting to enable the committee and staff to work together to hammer out the details of a new fund. So this is pretty on target for what we've said we want to do. The committee is really energized, and I anticipate we'll come back to you in future months around pursuit of a more comprehensive food system needs assessment for our area, because food insecurity will continue to be such an issue during these times. So without saying anything else, I just want to introduce Ashlyn Bristol and Abraham McClurg. Looks like he's with her too. They're both members of the Ag Advisory Committee and the leadership of Reebok Farm. So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about this proposal. And I would say that both as the chair of the committee, but also as a farmer in Brattleboro, I'm strongly in support of it. I see it as a move away from an emergency response and towards resiliency planning, which I think is incredibly important in our food system as we move into more and more climate insecurity in our food and in my personal income. So I love resiliency planning all around. I think is a good idea. I also think that it's going to make this fund more accessible to farmers, food producers of color, to the BIPOC community that's been really excluded from many initiatives historically in the food system. The fund as it currently exists is to protect current farmland, and I think that broadening the use of the fund, both in terms of who can access it and what it can be accessed for, will allow many more projects, we hope, but also projects from a wider range of people. You don't have to already own farmland, essentially, in order to use these funds. So we're really excited to be moving this forward to the next step.
Well, thank you. This is very interesting. And do select board members have questions or comments? Go ahead, Tim.
Well, who can educate me a little bit as to, are there current ideas out there as to how this fund would be funded? Because this fund has been inactive for quite a while, right? I mean, perhaps.
I can speak to the current state of the fund a bit, if that helps.
Yes.
So I believe the fund has had a balance of around $50,000 for the last few years. In the past, this fund has been rated as it grew interest, and that was tapped for other purposes here and there. Moving forward, there is a question as to how to maintain and replenish the fund, and the committee has had discussion around that. But as is, there is an active amount of capital to start working with, and what we're trying to come up with in terms of a process for giving out these loans will be very attentive to keeping that fund balance maintained and working off the interest, and include financial professionals to gauge that for us and be involved in the process.
So Stephen, does this money come from state and federal sources like program income? Patrick, maybe you know more about it, where it comes from and where money can be gotten?
My recollection, and I'll start that way, is that this was from an appropriation by representative town meeting from years and years and years and years and years ago. I can recall in about the 2015 time period, the fund had about $95,000 in it. And there was a initiative to, because the fund hadn't been active, to go ahead and wipe that out and to use that $95,000 for various energy efficiency projects. Members of the Agricultural Advisory Committee said, well, listen, don't kill it entirely. Please take some if you need to for the energy efficiency project, but please leave some because we still think that there's some value that can be done with this fund. At that point, the board agreed and town meeting ultimately approved that $50,000 would remain with the agricultural fund and the $45,000 will be used to establish an energy efficiency fund. So.
Okay, so Stephen, is there, as part of this initiative, are you looking for grants and other like agricultural funding to reimburse the fund as it's expended?
Yes, indeed. And hopefully the loans would be repaid and the fund is, in a sense, self-sustaining, and interest can help with that process. There aren't a lot of grants that are willing to be used for such a revolving loan fund purpose. Most grantors want to see the concrete results of their money, not loans given out for additional projects down the line. So that is tough. But we've talked about simple things such as the Roundup program at the co-op being a place that could be very amenable to that kind of thing. But in the end, it is something that if we care about our farms, we're going to have to be creative about how we expand it and continue to grow it if we see that as a priority. There aren't a lot of other funding sources that I've been able to find other than that.
Great. Are there members of the public who would like to speak, Patrick?
Not at this time.
Daniel.
Good. Okay. Stephen, could you or members of the committee speak to the sorts of things this money could fund? Like, you know,
Ashlyn, I'd love for you to take that one. I think you know better than I. She's waiting to be unmuted. In general, I know the focus has been on land. This would expand into additional capital expenditures for other farm-related, enterprise-related endeavors, and extend to people like processors, distributors, and others. But I bet Ashlyn has some real good concrete examples.
I do. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, our farm has a long list of business improvements and capital investments that if this passes, we would love to apply for loans for. We want to create a database for not infrastructure, inventory, our inventory management, which is really difficult on a pasture-based farm. One doesn't exist right now, so we want to work with a professional, and that will cost a couple $1,000s that we don't have. Slaughter equipment so that we can increase our output and decrease our labor costs. We've been talking about pulling in a consultant for barn flow, those kinds of things that really down the line create a stronger business for us. And we would love to just sort of believers in the CSA model as CSA farmers. The idea of being able to get a loan here instead of further afield in Vermont or through USDA is really appealing to us. So both the combination of a local fund that we're paying into that we're helping maintain, in addition to having an endless list of ways that we can improve our farm. And I'm sure most local farms have a similar list. I can't speak to distributors or processors, but the same thing, if your business is shifting and adapting, you always have more, you always have to spend money on things.
And who would be determining the use of funds? The agricultural committee would review?
If I can speak to that a bit, we have a bit of a draft of how that process would go. It would be separated from the committee so that there's no even possible appearance of a conflict of interest. But that would be a separate group that handles things. And I believe the town has a pretty pro forma kind of process for doing these kind of loan decisions. And
yes,
so
they do.
We will be sure to copy the existing kind of format for how that is both separated from the ag committee and people who may be interested in those funds, and contains the right skill sets to make a prudent decision.
Thank you, Stephen. Daniel.
That was my question.
Okay.
First off, Ashlyn, thank you very much for that last bit. I don't think while I've been on the board, we've really had a Brattleboro farmer present. So
not knowingly.
Not knowingly. So it's just very interesting to hear. My question is maybe for you and maybe for Stephen, I'm not sure. So for a revolving loan fund like this, there has to be like a base amount in there at all times, I'd imagine. Or I don't know, maybe not. But how many loans do you sort of see being able to go out? Like how many people could this be, this loan fund be utilized by? Are these like going to be a couple grand, or is this like maybe one or two people get access to it a year? Or are you not far enough along?
I think mostly the last.
We're
not far enough along, but up until then, my response was going to be, it all depends on market performance and who shows up that year with what requests. We want to maintain the fund. It needs to be, continually used throughout the year. So we're not interested in depleting it and giving large loans out without a confidence that we actually do have other revenue that will replace that and maintain this in operation. So that's part of the to be determined, and how we hope to structure it intends to build in flexibility to say, okay, some years we may not give much because maybe it was a terrible year for the fund and we really just don't have that to give in this moment without sacrificing the principle of the investment, right? So we're very aware of that, and it'll be a flux kind of situation in that case.
All right, thank you.
How about the right side of the table?
I love how you cited the town plan in this memo. It was great. And it looks like this work and this change would be right in the direction of what the grander vision for the agriculture sector is here in Brattleboro. And Thank you for including that. That was very helpful.
You good, Tim?
Yeah, pretty much, because it's a RTM fund originally, and RTM has every right and should be discussing it. I might just caution that, you know, in the, you mentioned the town plan quote, which is terrific at the end of the memo here. It does start off by saying the protection of agricultural land remains important. So I would just encourage you to keep that in mind. There may be some people at RTM that really want to hear how it would be weighted for individual farms to invest in different things using the fund in that way, but is it also still going to be available for the original purpose if there's a new flux, you know, an influx of interest in it? I just thought that try to capture the whole thing and not turn it into it's a very specific fund and unfortunately not being used, but it's a specific purpose to protect land. And if you lose that entirely, you might have to change your methodology for convincing some folks on it.
So these are all good questions, and I'm sure that before you, well, we're going to vote, but I'm sure that if it comes before town meeting, there'll be similar questions. So the more that you can flesh out this program, I think the better served you will be. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to place an article on the warning to expand the Agricultural Land Protection Fund to include providing loans, working capital, and business management in addition to purchasing real property rights in order to protect agricultural lands in Brattleboro, and to rename the fund the Brattleboro Food and Systems Revolving Loan and Grant Fund.
Thank you, Tim. Tim has made a motion to place an article on the warning to expand the Agricultural Land Protection Fund to include providing loans, working capital, and business management, in addition to purchasing real property rights in order to protect agricultural lands in Brattleboro, and to rename the fund the Brattleboro Food and Systems Revolving Loan and Grant Fund. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's another 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bebop Farms. Okay, can we introduce Chloe Learey?
Yes. She should be on.
Yes, she should be here. Hi, Chloe. Welcome. And thank you for. Hi. And you're going to present to us your plans for childcare options at representative town meeting. But you know what? We have this weird situation where we may or may not be in person this year, but certainly next year, hope springing eternal, we'll have a robust daycare plan that you'll tell us about. So do please tell us.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I just want to say I don't have a robust plan right now. I just wanted to share sort of outlines of thoughts because the situation is tenuous and we don't actually know what we would do, but I can certainly, this has been in the works for a couple of years. We've talked about it. And so I can share sort of the general outline of what our thinking is and am open to questions and suggestions as needed. So, when we talked about the Prouty Center sort of helping organize a program for childcare for representative town meeting, I think there are lots of options about that. It's certainly something we do. Our population is 0 to 5. So, I understand that there are probably representative town folks who have older children. And what's really great, I think, about our ability to organize something is that we have lots of folks on campus who do lots of different kinds of programming. Vermont Wilderness School is there. Bonnievale has an office on campus. So what I imagine happening is some sort of organizing around figuring out who needs care, what does it look like, what's the time frame, and then building based on need a program that will work for folks to access if they need it to be part of representative town meeting. So, I think there would be lots of details to figure out, but it would, I imagine, be, there's lots of different spaces on campus. There's a gym, there's the trails, there's indoor space, there's outdoor space. So I can imagine a really varied program that would work for lots of different people and be supported collaboratively. Frankly, I guess I would offer that the Prouty Center is willing to sort of organize and hold it, but would invite other people to help us with it as well. So that's a really broad outline of what we were imagining doing. We didn't put a lot of time into it because we understand that it might not be something that happens. And if our team is not in person, I don't think we would. Offering childcare doesn't make any sense either. If it's not safe enough to have meeting in person, then it doesn't make sense to have childcare. So, so those are some broad brushstrokes, and I'd really be happy to answer questions or hear other people's thoughts, or if there's something I didn't cover that people were concerned about.
Thank you, Chloe. One thing that came to my mind is that RSVPing is a very necessary element of your planning. That you really need to know the age and whether willingness to participate of all the children. Big part of this.
That would be, yeah, absolutely. It would not be like drop and carry, you decide that morning. We would have to know ahead of time who's coming, what ages. We would have, and also to be clear, this wouldn't be part of our licensed childcare program. It would be something separate that we contract with the town to organize. And so we'd figure out, what kind of consents and liability families would have to sort of register for this program, similar to maybe like a snow day program or a summer camp or something like that. So
Great.
Yes, absolutely. It would not be last minute at all. It would have to be organized, we would want it to be something that, was sort of fun and interesting to do. And that's hard to plan if we don't know who's coming.
Great. Let's go to the parent side of the room.
Wonderful.
Jessica?
Thanks. I actually wanted to push back a little on the idea about if town meeting is remote, then childcare is not needed. As a parent who worked from home during the lockdown with the 11-year-old constantly coming in the door saying, I'm bored, what can I do? It's I think something that we should still leave the door open on, depending on where things are at. It may not be a good time to have 150 people sitting in the same room, but it might be okay for folks to go participate in childcare or outdoor youth programs or something like that. So I want to say that even though people are tuning in from home, childcare is still important.
Duly noted.
Can't argue with that last one.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Okay.
happy. I don't have any specific questions for Chloe. Thank you, Chloe.
Yeah.
I think it's a good
Best
partner, good future partner. I'm not sure Liz is still with me. Oh, sorry. Just making sure I still have the floor.
Yeah, you do. I was just making sure that, what's up next and you have the floor.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were moving on.
No.
I missed it. Anyway, so thanks, Chloe. I don't have any specific questions.
Oh my God. I thought that you were done, and I thought that we were moving on, so,
He was just making sure that he had the opportunity to say that he was done.
Very good. Are you done, sir?
I think the floor needs to go back to Tim to double check on this.
And if I could just weigh in, can I weigh in?
We only have one camera here. No offense, but when you have multiple cameras, you get more of a feeling of what's going on in the room.
Yes.
And I was a little distracted by eyes going back and forth, so I didn't know if I had.
Tim did not have my full attention. Let's just say that.
Did Chloe want to speak?
Chloe?
I just wanted to, Jessica, address your point. I absolutely think that childcare probably is needed if you're at home and trying to participate in a Zoom meeting for hours and hours and hours. I just, depending on the circumstances, would wonder about bringing kids together who are not normally together, depending on what depending on what indicators were not allowing us to be in representative town meeting, we'd have to weigh that. And certainly being outside and being at a camp, there might be ways to do it, or limiting the size of what's available. I wouldn't want to close the door on it either. I just would be a little more cautious, again, depending on why it was that we weren't being in person. So.
Daniel.
I just want to say that I appreciate Jessica's perspective on that, and that we should leave the door open.
Mhm.
And there's much that we don't know about these next few months, so let's keep an open mind.
Great. Ian.
I just wanted to speak to the fact that the RSVP component is super doable. Now we know that we can send out a survey to like all of RTM and get like 98% response rates based on trying to do it remotely the first time. So yeah, I think we'll be able to, and we could probably do like a questionnaire that includes multiple things in it, like age of kid, like whether you want to have multiple kids, whether you want it or not. So
whether they have COVID,
or not. So,
Well, certainly whether they're vaccinated.
yeah.
Thank you, Chloe, for your willingness to be open to all of this flexibility.
Absolutely. Happy to help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're down to our last item, Yoshi.
Yes, this is a ordinance change on first reading. I believe this Sue is on to give a brief description.
Sue, are you with us? Is it Sue Fillion, or are you discussing this? Yeah.
Speak to the
Oh,
ordinance.
you can speak
Oh,
to
very
that.
good.
Okay.
So there's a memo included in their package that I somehow lost track of. And tonight, the board is asked to just conduct a first reading. There's no action that is necessarily, there's no action whatsoever, which is required of the board this evening. The process for passing a change to the ordinance in Vermont includes a first reading followed by this same item will be on the agenda for the 18th. At that point in time, the board would conduct a public hearing and make a determination. If the board votes to amend the ordinance, then that language would be published in the newspaper. And 60 days after that publication, it would go into effect, assuming we don't receive a petition with 5% of the registered voters who object to the ordinance change. Each of these two changes arrived to the select board after being thoroughly considered and voted upon by the Traffic Safety Committee. So these are well vetted items. The first one is to add a stop sign on Canal Street headed north at South Main Street. And this is, as the memo will describe, an attempt to alleviate what is perceived to be a dangerous condition at that crosswalk and to help to better manage traffic at the connection of South Main and Canal. The second item is on Oak Street, and this is out in front of Community House on the westerly side of Oak Street. Is to establish a limited parking area, which would be a combination of pickup and drop off during 2 periods of time, so that parents can pick up and drop off their kids and kind of come in and get out for very, very short periods of time. And in the hours in between those 2 pickup and drop offs would be 1 hour parking.
And then this last thing, the code of ordinance, is that related to the community house?
Yeah, so that would be a change to Appendix C, Section 16-101, limited parking, to have the following language. On the westerly side of Oak Street, in the area directly in front of 24 Oak Street, the community school, will be a drop-off and pickup only, Monday through Friday, 7:15 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and 2:15 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Otherwise, 1 hour limited parking between the hours of 8:30 and 2:15.
Great. Let's hear first from the member of the Traffic Safety Committee.
Oh, okay. I think it is noteworthy that the reason why these need to be ordinance changes is to make them official and enforceable. So I mean, I guess we could be cowboys and just stick a stop sign there where we wanted to, but in terms of it being legally enforceable, it would mean nothing. And same goes for, the limited parking thing. So it's, these are things that we've already discussed at traffic safety a number of times that have then come to the board. The board has heard about both of these issues. The board has said that they are in favor of both of these things moving forward. We've taken public comment. So straightforward.
Great.
I think.
Talked about Oak Street.
We have, yeah, maybe not a big discussion, but we did.
I don't remember that. I certainly remember the South Main.
Yeah, I have no memory.
Well, maybe I'll review.
Irregardless, they both sound like excellent ideas.
Yeah.
So Jersey.
What's-
No, I was just gonna say, I don't think we've talked about Oak Street, but I'm perfectly happy with the recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traffic safety.
Other members?
Maybe,
Discussion? Ian?
I just had one question to Patrick. On the timeline that you just set forth, is it different when it's changing a code of ordinance that involves like a traffic sign or something like that? Because it has a different process with the state? Like when
I believe it's a statutory process regardless.
So it's the same no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my understanding.
But again, it's Dylan's rule rearing its ugly head.
Mhm.
right?
We have a very, long and multi-step process in order to do what I think, a reasonable set of public officials think is the right thing to do. The town manager, the police chief, the public works director, and the fire chief and members of the community all said, yeah, a stop sign there is the right thing to do. We can put up a stop sign in, no time. But in order to provide the sort of legal foundation for which to say, oh, you should have stopped there, I'm going to issue you a citation, we need to go through this fairly lengthy process.
Yeah.
Is there
Yes.
also some sort of magic words I'm remembering from being chair? Do we have to officially open a public hearing?
Not
Not
at this
today.
time. This is
no
the
action.
first reading.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay. I just didn't want to slip up on our first reading. So
yeah. No, so this is the first, no action is required at this time.
Okay.
But if any questions or
take public
concerns,
comment now.
and I believe there's members of the public who would wish to speak.
We have one, Ricky Rosati.
Okay. Ricky, please join us.
Yeah. So if all of these steps to be approved, if it's approved on every step, when is the date that it would be installed? And can that date be included in the motion? Or like so many days after it's finally approved?
Well,
Could that be part of the motion that then it will be installed?
Ricky, I think as Patrick just outlined, it's such an involved process and we cannot pick a date certain because it depends on the state of Vermont.
Yeah, so instead of a date certain, could it be like, then so many days after it's finally approved, then there will be a guaranteed installment after it's
I don't-
finally approved?
I don't think that's necessary, Ricky. Daniel, did you?
I recall 60 days being about right. Like, you go through this process and then 60 days and after that it goes into effect. Is that right?
It's 60 days from the date of publication.
Right.
I think it's on a public works to-do list and it may get installed prior to that 60 days. And so this ordinance may be a bit of catch up.
Interesting.
But it will be necessary if we are to, somebody contests a citation and we have no ordinance to back it up, we would find ourselves, unable to defend that action.
So it's a matter of getting permission from the state, receiving it, and whether or not you've already put the stop sign in place.
I don't know the specific date that the stop sign will be installed. I know that it's on a to-do list at Public Works and it may get installed at some point in time. I think Town Manager Elwell's motivation was, let's get this stop sign in as soon as we can because we believe that's going to correct an unsafe condition on that street.
Mhm.
And then let's allow the ordinance to catch up with that action.
So then I don't think a time frame is necessary because you're working in all due speed.
Looks like
Concur.
there might be one other person with a hand.
Is there one other person with their hand up?
I can't read it.
That is
I can't-
correct.
I can't.
Sandra Stromberg.
Hello, Sandra. Please join us. Sandra,
Hello?
are you unmuted?
Oh,
Yep, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
we can hear you.
okay. I just wanted to comment on the issue on the west side of Oak Street. I, in the past, have been a teacher at Community House, and it is a great danger to dismiss students during dismissal time with the backlog of cars going through the parking lot and in that area. And I would just want to say, as a member of the community and as a teacher, former teacher there, that it is a pressing need.
Oh, great, Sandra. Thank you for telling us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else? No, so thank you very much. All right. Board, there's no action required at this time. Is there any further comment that you'd like to make on this issue? Seeing none. And I want to thank Yoshi for his first meeting. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It doesn't always have to be Jessica.
Everyone just looked at me, so adjourn.
Great. Jessica has made a motion to adjourn. All select board members in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand and say aye.
All right.
Thank you all very much.